Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to share with you that IOD is celebrating 35 years of pioneering a silent revolution within the boardroom as India's leading organization for corporate directors. Over the last 3 decades, IOD has carved out a niche when it comes to mentoring upcoming directors and adding value to the existing corporate governance ecosystem.
It's our privilege to welcome you to this important members meet hosted by the Institute of Directors, and I am truly delighted to see such a diverse and distinguished gathering of corporate leaders, directors, professionals, and governance champions assembled here today. Well, as you know, the theme of today's meet is to choosing the right board and also unleashing the transformative power of the independent directors. Now, in this changing economic, social, and regulatory landscape, the composition and the caliber of the board have become defining factors for long-term corporate success as well as for sustainability. Governance today, as you all know, is no longer a static, compliance-driven function. It is a dynamic, strategic, and forward-looking force. With rising stakeholder activism, ESG pressures, technology disruptions, and the pursuit of sustainable growth, boards must now serve as both custodians of accountability as well as champions of transformation. So I wish all the members here a very bright future, a very good career in front. And these days, of course, hard work pays. Hard work has no substitute. And I am sure all of you are keeping yourself up to date with the latest technologies which are emerging and whatever are the things which are happening in the various companies in the boardroom. So that will help you in progressing your own careers. Well, thank you very much. I wish you all the very best.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll now have a special presentation. May I now invite Mr. Vineet Nahata on the dais to deliver the special presentation.
My company is Powergill Treasuries. We happen to be in the business of treasury management. There is a lot of buzz about India happening to be the investment hub as far as the fixed income market is concerned. The returns which have been generated by the fixed income space, by fixed income I mean government securities, bonds. This is the space where safety and security of money remains intact. The returns is reasonable, say 6 to 8%. This fixed income market is predominantly dominated by bank fixed deposits or term deposits, and in the mutual fund space, the debt schemes or income schemes. Direct investment in bonds and its benefits is an area which is relatively unheard of or not very popular, which happens to be gaining traction in a big way now with the online bond trading platforms coming up. Why I say that India happens to be on the investment radar of the entire globe now is that our economy happens to be at on a takeoff stage, and the real rate of return which is offered by India happens to be amongst the highest.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for Mr. Vineet Nahata, Director, Powergill Fixed Income Debt Management LLP. Thank you very much for a very insightful and informative presentation. Thank you so much for sharing your expert insights with us.
Right from the very inception, we had been aligning our policies with the national narrative when in the early 90s, our economy opened out. Dr. Madhav Era, who was the founder president of the Institute of Directors, decided which of the two things, the quality and the corporate governance issues, need importance and training for the people to be really geared up for the new economic outlook. And that is where we started. And ever since, We have always been associated with where the government's policies and the government's outlook goes, that we also try to align. Linking that way from with the present government's narrative, where the Prime Minister has been going around talking in various countries as to how the Indian companies have to become competitive. Indian companies have to really be the leaders, not the followers. So we think that that requires a new concept of corporate governance that needs to be built into our whole corporate ecosystem. And you must have seen that now India has also taken the Prime Minister during the last 5 country visits. He has also made it clear that we are also going to have the line of credit open for the exports that we will be making from here. So that means we are opening out and really not only just competing, but we're trying to find out methods as to how we could be leading beyond what the other countries are doing. If these new concepts come in, then we had to look at where does our directorship, and especially the independent directorship, should really be looking forward to, and keeping that in mind, the Institute of Directors decided that we had a preliminary survey with our members to find out how the members thought of movement into the directives for the independent directors. Based on that, we framed a larger framework for conducting our survey and the data that we got. Now we thought that we looked into the whole scenario for the independent directors and where they should be moving in. The independent directors are conscience keepers of corporate governance. They bring objectivity, challenge groupthink, and safeguard stakeholder interests. Yet in recent years, we have seen a troubling trend. IDs resigning en masse due to governance concerns. Increasing legal liabilities are deterring top talent from taking up board roles, and promoter-dominated selections reduce true independence. As IOD now celebrates 35 years of existence, on this occasion we thought that what kind of a legacy we should carry forward. When we look back, we found that we have aligned with the government's policies and made all our actions very much serving to the national interest. So now also we feel if there is a new narrative that the government is writing aimed at year 2047, all our actions should be so identified that the whole corporate governance practices which will be supported by the independent directors and make our country much more vibrant, our corporations leading in the international arena. All these should be aimed at 2047 when we attain 100 years and the government and everyone looks forward to a Viksit Bharat. So let's also fix, if a target should be fixed, then only we reach somewhere. So our actions must strengthen board's independence for India's global competitiveness and leadership, and let independent directors be the agents of change and good corporate governance. This is, in brief, we had our committee did this, and we are since we have just drafted the report, you will find that a sheet would be available on your table shortly, where you can, if you have, there is a survey, you can fill in, give more suggestions. You can use the QR code or use the URL if you want to do it digitally. Either way, please give us the suggestions. We will be very happy to include all these and then make our recommendations available and feel that these must be useful for the government, for corporate world, and for the overall India's growth. While closing, I should mention Mr. Manoj Rao's name, who just took our CEO, who took the initiative to do the first study survey that we should do it, which has now led to this.
Good morning, everyone. Choosing the right board. Unleashing the transformative power of independent directors. Theme for today's session. The role of independent directors has evolved far beyond compliance and oversight. In an era of geopolitical volatility, technological disruption, and stakeholder capitalism, the independent directors are now expected to be catalysts for transformation, bringing strategic foresight, ethical courage, and independent thinking to the boardroom. But what does it take to excel in this today? Is it sector expertise, crisis leadership, or the ability to challenge consensus? How do we move from good governance to great governance? We are privileged to have with us an exceptional panel of leaders who have shaped boards across industries and institutions. So we'll begin by asking our panelists some of the questions that we have framed. Maybe the first question can be taken by all the panelists. When evaluating a board invitation, what are the non-negotiable factors you believe every independent director must assess before accepting the role?
I think this topic that we're having today is extremely important, especially in today's day and age. I think from my perspective, there are a couple of 4 or 5 critical elements in terms of the way I see when I get invited to join a board. I think the first and most important thing is governance. I think governance is an easy word and everybody uses it all the time. And it's obviously, it's a basic, tenet for any company. But the execution of governance, governance is not about just us guys going as CEOs and talking to our people. It has to be built in to the beliefs that the company has, the beliefs that the promoter has, because if the promoter and the company doesn't have that deep belief in governance, it doesn't matter what we all do, it just shows and shines at some point in time. I think a good example is the Tata Group, and I keep showing that as a real benchmark, and I'm sure Mr. Jha, you'll talk about it, as a company that has and shows that elements and the standards of governance that stands out. Now, the reason I say that is that if you look at vast numbers of companies, and in the last 10, 15 years, I keep thinking, why do some companies perform better than others? And I think there are 3 critical elements that stand out. The first one is governance. The second one is low leverage. And third, increasingly, as India becomes a global player, companies where a large part of their revenues come from overseas.
Mr. Sudhir, non-negotiables before you accept any position.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. Going straight to the question of Preeti, I would say that it has some structured setup. The company or the board of directors who offer the post of independent directors to other people also need to make some sort of evaluation to whom they want to be on the board, and the process starts there. As being one of the candidates to be offered the job of independent director on any company's board, then you also have to make a sort of evaluation, because it's not about getting too happy too soon. It should be a careful choice whether the industry or the board is a fit to your liking, to your expertise, to your area of domain, whether you have the relevant expertise, because just passing years in the industry may not have given you the sort of corporate game that you need to play on the board. So you need to have some sort of training, some sort of acumen, some sort of experience along your job profile, so that you are able to effectively contribute. And some of the classes or some of the courses like IOD courses or other institutes, people should be aware of those things, and even the companies which take people on board should be aware of, so that it's if not a perfect match for the company as well as the individual, it at least some sort of match. It's not totally out of sync. That will be one aspect of selection and offering yourself for consideration. Then there are two major differences like private sector and public sector. Now there comes a catch. The boards on the public sectors do also have independent directors. The boards, because everywhere the talk is promoter driven. What is promoter driven in public sector? You don't have friends. Public sector means it's a big an envelope of government and its people. So now there is nothing like promoter driven. Then it becomes even more difficult to identify who is the promoter, who is patronizing whom. So there again due diligence is being done of late. Due diligence on both sides again, on part of the boards and on part of the IDs who come on board. So I would say basically both sides need to be careful. Both sides need to have some sort of due diligence. Take on board people who add value, who are adept in some of the domains where the board is already lacking, because you do have functional expertise on the board. So once you bring in IDs, they should be adding an additional dimension to your decision-making process, to your governance, to your expansion, to your future growth scenario, as Mr. Tejpreet was saying. So we need to take care, we should be future-proof, and there the IDs will play a major role. So I can only foresee that going forward, the candidates of independent directors also become choosy, as well as the board applies all forms of due diligence to get the right candidates on board. Thank you, Preeti.
Thank you. Mr. Jha, what factors would you see before accepting a position?
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'll share with you my perspective from a slightly different context. We all know that win-lose is not a real option in today's world. Everybody talks about win-win. Win-win is a collusive system. And this is a collusion between any two entities that can happen. It can happen between a board of management and the operating management and the board. It can happen between the shareholders and the board. There is this win-win actually in last 300 years, ever since the start of the Industrial Revolution. If you look at it, it has destroyed the world by now. The win-win has been a big collusion between all the world's consumers, that is all of us, with all the world's producers, at the cost of somebody else. It is win-win-lose. Just like win-lose is not acceptable, is win-win-lose an acceptable proposition? In fact, this independence and governance, which was missing from the oversight for a long, long time, particularly in capitalist economies, if people of my age would have certainly read Ayn Rand and Virtues of Selfishness. But even in that virtues of selfishness, there is an enlightened self-interest that is being talked about. This enlightened self-interest has been missing from most of the corporate world, and there has been rarity, like the likes of J.N. Tata, who said that for every tree I fell, I will plant a new tree. More than 100 years before corporate governance and CSR became relevant terms. If you can't have a voice, where there will be a tendency of the primary shareholders to try and do things which are in their benefit, if it is at the cost of minority shareholders and you are unable to protect it, you have no job to be in the boardroom. Thank you very much.
Singh Chopra, thank you very much, sir. I now request all our dignitaries to please come together for a group photograph. Our upcoming session will enlighten us from distinguished policy makers who've been part of the government with varied roles.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for being here today. I also want to thank this very distinguished panel. So our panel, I hope we're going to discuss how once you've joined the board, what can you do as an independent director to transform or play a role in the transformative journey of the company that you're on the board of. And also, given the wealth and the depth of experience that we have from the public sector, the government sector, hopefully we can get some ideas from them as to how they think about what needs to be done and what can the government do to strengthen corporate governance across India. I wanted to actually ask the question to each one of you. As to Mr. Verma, to you first, how have you, the bureaucracy is very hierarchical, and you've spent most of your years in the bureaucracy, actually all of you have, and now you transition into the corporate sector and on a board where it's very important to speak up, whereas in the bureaucracy, it's probably not so important to speak up, but to toe the line. So how do you make the transition, and what do you think has been a big learning for you as you move from the private sector to an independent director role?
Thank you, Punitaji, for asking a very interesting question and also probably putting the panelists in a very tight condition. Let me tell you, that's my experience. I retired probably much earlier than all of my friends here, and then I've been in the private sector dealing with the corporates sometimes and in being on the board. To my opinion, a big corporate and a government, in terms of the aptitude, in terms of the way of the functioning, in terms of freedom of taking decisions, it is almost the same. It is different that in the government probably you are not speaking up openly, but you are making your points in a different way. You are doing it all the time, and all the successful colleagues who are sitting here and make an exclusion of mine, but they have been doing this in their own way. They do it and they influence the decision making, and the decisions are made. In the private sector also I have seen that is the situation. The one important point that I want to emphasize here is about the innovation, about out-of-box thinking. In terms of the out-of-box thinking, in the government, there are minuscule percentage of people who do that. But same is the situation in the private sector. And therefore, in a corporate body, in a corporate board, people being from the government and people coming from the private sector, what is required is to unleash, because I think that's the language that you have used in your topic of the discussion today, that how do you unleash that potential, that is very important. I do not think that there is a set pattern of attitudes which is there in the private sector and the government sector. Probably the way of unleashing is different. So I'll stop there. And
would any of the other panelists like to add on that? Actually, and specifically to you, Mr. Goyal, so you, from your background, it seems you moved from the government to becoming a promoter and being an entrepreneur as well.
In government sector, contrary to the general belief, the opportunity to speak out one's mind is much more than what you can have in the private sector. Yes, we always say yes, ministers. The minister also says yes, minister. But it's a fact that whatever proposal in certain rules, like I have been the Home Secretary of Haryana, and the then Chief Minister had gone on record by saying that whatever proposal you said, I never said no to anything. So government sector has its own way of doing things. Bureaucracy works in a faceless manner. A good bureaucrat is faceless. So he doesn't say what he did, what he didn't do. Of course, nowadays things are changing. But it's not true that in government sector people don't speak up. It's not correct to say in government sector people don't innovate, people don't do. Public servants have contributed immensely for the development of the country, at least in the era where we were a guided economy. And after the economy opened up, to play a partnership role with the private sector, the public servants did play an important role, are still playing. But a good bureaucrat will not be speaking out, and people who speak out in public about the opinion are often looked down by their own colleagues. These are the things I would like to add.
Let me just add a different sort of angle to this, and that is, you said, when you are transitioning from being in government to being on the board or being in the corporate. Now, one of the things that I think you can bring to the table is the ability to analyze alternatives. And in business or in decisions, there are things which are obvious and there are things which perhaps are not so obvious. And those analytical skills of what those alternatives might be, of getting perhaps to the same final end product. But I think that is a value that an independent director, and particularly perhaps as you deal with a lot of data, as you deal with a lot of public policy, that you can bring is this analysis of alternatives and not just take the alternative on the table as given. I think that's the first point that I would make. The second one is the fact that you bring in an element of externality, and the externalities that we all know. And today, sometimes the externalities are actually becoming more important than your own internal decisions. And I'll just take two. One is, of course, and I think during the last panel discussion, someone mentioned, today's world of uncertainty, the supply chain today, particularly in manufacturing, has become an absolute imperative. You may not have control because you have a whole stream of value chain suppliers. But here is where the excess is. What happens when something goes wrong? And a very typical example that is happening in the auto sector today, because of the problem of rare earth, that you don't have a particular thing. Now, can you anticipate some of these supply chain issues and have alternatives? The whole world is trying to do it, but at a micro firm level, I think this is absolutely an imperative that is, I think, intrinsic to success or failure.
Regarding what Sumanto has added, I would like to add to that. So being an IAS officer, so one thing that you get is that you get to work in different domains, different functional areas. And also during your tenure, you also work on the board of different public sector undertakings. And that really gives you an exposure that how you really have to function in the board. In my personal case, I was little lucky to work in private companies, which very seldom happens when you are working in the government. I was on the board of directors of the 3 distribution companies of Delhi, where 51% of the shareholding was in the private and 49% with the government. So, and I was on the board of directors for nearly 2 years when just the transition had taken place from the government to the private. So that really gave me an exposure, firstly about how the different boards function, and they were run by 2 different groups, Tatas and BSES. And then, you have to protect the interest of the government. So when we are talking of minorities, shareholder interest, so in the similar line at that time, where protecting the interest of the government became very important because we had the 49% shareholding. And I think for that, I would say that for independent director, it's very important that you have to really, work hard, because normally the agenda that comes to you, that comes, just maybe 2 days before or very, very close to when the meeting is taking place. So just like saying that, you just have to depend upon someone, that doesn't happen. And in my own personal case, I know that I was also a member of the audit committee, and I really found that there was something in the accounts which were not properly dealt with. And of course, I was being forced that we should really, accept the account, but I put my foot down that my dissent note has to be. So when I took that stand, then, some modifications were made, and it's very important then when related party transactions are taking place or other things are taking place, so good disclosure should be there. So I think independent directors, firstly, that basic knowledge of how to read financial statements, how to interpret them. I'm not saying very, very deep knowledge, but the basic knowledge has to be there. And whenever you find that there's a lot of variation taking place, so that needs to be questioned. And as an independent director, it also becomes very important that, if you are really not satisfied with something, so you really ask for more information. It's not that until and unless very important that decision has to be taken in that board meeting. So it can always be postponed. You can get more reading, and then more informed decision can be taken. So I think, so this is, I thought, from my own personal perspective, I would like to add at this juncture.
Thanks. And so how, it's a similar situation to when you have a company that's dominated by a family or a corporate group. How do you balance that role of an independent director to look after the interests of all stakeholders? So how does the government think about the other shareholders?
I think in that also, wherever the nominee directors are there, even if it's a minority shareholding, so it's become that the role I told that which is there applicable for the independent director, so that kind of a role is applicable for them also. In case you have a representation on the board and you find that something is, their interest is not getting protected, you really have to seek for more information and then see to it that your interest is protected. I think at that time, those board of director members, they have to play a proactive role. Yeah.
Now, each of you have been in different sectors of the government. So in the sectors that you've been involved in your case, the two of you have been in coal and energy. How do you think about the governance challenges that the companies, the private sector companies, are facing, and what policy ideas did you have, both as a regulator or, in your case, in the Ministry of Coal? How do you make those companies more private-like, and what suggestions you have for the private sector companies in terms of how and what challenges they're likely to face, and so what should independent directors serving companies in that sector think about?
So let me talk of the coal sector now. Of course, we know that Coal India and its subsidiaries contributes the majority. More than 80% of the coal production comes. But there are, of course, a large number of coal mines that have been awarded. Forget all those litigations and all that have surrounded them. But one of the issues is, how do you actually bring down the time from the time a mine is allotted to the time when actually coal starts getting produced? And this is a major challenge that involves a host of regulatory, anticipatory, technology, all these things. And so therefore that is one angle. The other angle that I think particularly in coal, which one cannot forget and should not forget, is that in some sense, by the very nature of coal production, and of course where it is used, the issue of climate change and the issue of environment becomes absolutely critical, both in terms of the energy transition away from coal, but equally importantly, that while this transition is happening, the methodologies and things that you do in the sector itself make you more or less of carbon footprint. And that is a huge challenge. I'll give you one example. The movement of coal from the pit head of the mine, often because there are no conveyor belts and so on, leads to movement by road. And that is the most polluting and carbon intensive way of transporting coal. Now a simple sort of, not a simple, but in some sense a path-breaking order was taken that the first mile connectivity is a part of the conditions for setting up a coal mine. Whether it is in the public sector, So the Coal India would have to do it. Similarly, any private sector would have to do it. You would have to mandatorily have the first mile connectivity, which can actually, so these are the kind of things that perhaps one can learn from each other and do it. But just to get back on one point, where it's a public sector undertaking, and there is of course a nominee director, and then of course there are independent directors. Essentially, I think nominee directors play two roles. They are also, normally they would be either a joint secretary or director of that particular department, and they also are a nominee director on the board of that. Now it is important to remember that these two are not always equal. These two roles, while the essential idea is to protect the interest, but they are not exactly the same. And here you are looking at, in some sense, that particular company itself and its job. While as a joint secretary of the government of India, your remit is much, much higher. Sometimes I think it's important to remember this basic difference.
Maybe 5 or 10 minutes left for questions.
Hi, good afternoon. For example, working at a PSU, I see a lot of fear of RTI, for example, and a lot of escaping decisions in that sense. But at the same time, I see a lot of understanding of the ground and a lot of patience as as decisions are made. Whereas in the private sector, previously I worked in the US, and I see a lot more agility in decision making and a lot of the Silicon Valley culture.
So what is the
So
question?
I feel like choosing the right board, like having a mix of the two backgrounds of corporate as well as government, would be what I feel would be a good representation on the board. And I just wanted to hear thoughts if such cases do exist and how the boards have learned from each other's experiences.
So I'm Advocate Pooja Suri, and I'm on the board of Oil India Limited as independent director, and also recently now on the board of our subsidiary company Numaligarh Refinery Limited. So although you all are very experienced persons at the dais, I just want to ask a very simple question, since you all are from bureaucracy and now you're having a great combination of great experience of the corporate world also. So where do you feel more independent, in your bureaucracy or in the corporate world?
Yes, working in the private sector as a board member is much easier than working in the government, because here you can make your choice. Either you speak out or you don't speak out, either you comment or you don't comment, either you participate or don't participate. So it's much, much easier there. Definitely, there is no doubt about that.
Please give it up for Mr. Sumanta Chaudhary. We now present to Mr. Arun Goyal. Sir, to please step forward. Kindly keep the applause going, ladies and gentlemen. Kindly keep the applause going, ladies and gentlemen.
Let me first of all congratulate Institute of Directors for this very, very interesting, very useful, and looking forward to IOD Members Meet. It's one of the best events I've attended. In fact, among their activities, the Golden Peacock Award is something which is being talked about around the world, which is one of the most prestigious awards, which has also inspired, motivated a number of companies to do better in various fields. So I wanted to compliment IOD for a useful work which they are doing. And this event, for example, when they are talking about the institute, about the directors, and the composition of directors and having good directors for the boards, I think is a very, very relevant topic.
Many congratulations to Mr. Chaluri. Heartfelt congratulations to you, sir. Kindly keep the applause going, ladies and gentlemen. Congratulations to Mr. once again congratulate Ms. Geeta Verma. Many congratulations to Ms. Anuradha Mutkal. Let's all congratulate Mr. Pradeep Kasari. Let's all put our hands together for Mr. Jagdish Kumar Kalra. And kindly keep the applause going, ladies and gentlemen, for Ms. Pooja Luthra.
Without each one of you, we would not have become what we are today. My deepest gratitude to every one of you. It is an honor and a privilege to deliver this vote of thanks on this special occasion of the IOD's, the Delhi NCR biannual, the members meet, and the felicitation of IOD's, the distinguished life members. Even it is more special as today we are celebrating IOD's 35th birthday, which is near about the median age of India's population. So we are still young and a lot more to explore, a lot more to do. So today's gathering has been a testament to the strength and the vibrancy of our IOD family. We are deeply grateful to each one of you for your support, active participation, and in making IOD a powerful force for boardroom excellence and corporate governance over the years. As we celebrate our life members, we also celebrate a shared vision, a vision of empowering independent directors to unleash their potential. Today, the independent directors are the bedrock of transparent, resilient, and forward-looking boards. Their courage, objectivity, and commitment to stakeholder interests will shape the future of organizations and the economy at large. May I now invite IOD President, General Nath, to come forward, and also I request IOD Governing Council members, Advisory Council members, and IOD staff to kindly grace the stage.
Beautiful smile will make the photograph even more special. So can we have bright and beautiful smiles on our faces? Thank you very much. We are thankful to our silver partner, Power Guild Fixed Income Debt Management LLP, and our bronze partner, HSCC India Limited, a Mini Ratna company.
Thank you.